Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today we're going to discuss the American revolutionary who wrote the first Broadway play. Kind of. Before we get into it, here's the reason I'm going to discuss Broadway. I don't know if you've heard, but it was just announced that the hit play Hamilton is about to release a movie in 2021 of filming of the original Broadway cast. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. So, I decided to discuss the founder who wrote the first Broadway play, kind of. Now, I will say there was a Broadway then, but there was no Broadway. It's really just the first play written by an American to be performed publicly, and it happened to be performed in New York City. And the founder we're going to discuss today is a man named Royall Tyler, who lived a fascinating life. To get started, Royall Tyler went to Harvard University, where he was known to use his inheritance to drink a lot of alcohol and be seen about town with, let's call them, less than savory women. And he liked to have a good time. He would, later in life, write about how he regretted certain things he did in college. And honestly, who didn't? So, Tyler goes on, he joins the revolutionary cause, he is part of the Massachusetts militia. He doesn't see a lot of action. He does participate in the Rhode Island expedition, and that's more or less it for the war, but he joined, and he did what he was told, so we can't hold it against him that he didn't see much other action than that. He went on after the war to study with Francis Dana in Francis Dana's law practice to become a lawyer himself. And one of my earliest videos was about Francis Dana. I will put a link in the description below and a little button up here you can hit if you'd rather go there right now and skip the end of this video, but you shouldn't. Anyway, he studies with Francis Dana, and he also is engaged to Abigail Nabby Adams, who is the daughter of Abigail and future President John Adams, and sister of another future president, John Quincy Adams. Unfortunately for Royall Tyler, he was still a young man, and his reputation, I can't say preceded him, but Nabby Adams ended up canceling the wedding because of who he was known to be, which probably had something to do with him later in life becoming very upset with how he behaved as a younger man. So anyway, he studies with Mr. Dana and he becomes a lawyer, but he stays in the militia, and then the Shays Rebellion breaks out. And we know what Shays Rebellion is. I've discussed it before, but he becomes one of the soldiers who serves under Benjamin Lincoln in routing out the Shays rebels. And he chases them into Vermont. And Royall Tyler is actually given the task. He's one of the few people who's charged with going into Vermont and finding the leaders and bringing them back. And he does. He finds several of them and brings them back for trial. Then he gets to the good part. He becomes a playwright. He doesn't become a playwright. He just is a lawyer who writes a play. And what's interesting, this play called The Contrast was it discussed the differences between British and American culture, because he was a Federalist and he liked the idea of the Constitution, and he wanted to find ways to help unite the new country, and one of which was to say, look, we were British, and most of us grew up thinking we were British, and for all intents and purposes we were, but there's a humongous difference between was happening in colonial America and now happening in the United States versus what happens in Britain. And his play, The Contrast, was about this. And it was the first play written by an American with the intention of being staged publicly. Other people had written plays, but they just wrote some plays. He literally sat down and said, I'm going to write a play to put on a stage. And he did that. And that play was done in New York City. And now, 2 plus centuries later, we have Broadway. And while he did not create Broadway, that's a little deceiving of me to say, he did start a theatrical tradition of plays in New York City. That's not the end for him. He did write another book a few years later, also during the George Washington administration. He wrote a play called The Algerian Captive. And it's deceiving. The title, the basic premise of the book was to talk about how important it was to maintain a federal union. Again, he really wanted to keep people together, and it seems like he made a little bit of money on the side doing so. So Tyler, after that, ends up moving to Vermont, and that's where he spends the rest of his days. First as a state attorney, which is more or less what we would think of as a district attorney today. And then, by the age of 45, he's appointed to the Supreme Court. And in his early 50s, he becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Vermont. So he went from being a fun-loving kid to one of the most respected men in the 14th state. He does resign before he passes away because he makes a run for the United States Senate, and he fails at that, but he did peak as Chief Justice. So I'm going to keep this short but sweet. Thank you for watching. I do want to note, I made a video earlier this week that I left unlisted instead of publishing it, and I'm embarrassed. I apologize if you were expecting a video from me on Wednesday, because I'm supposed to put them out 5 days a week. Did all the work for it, just didn't send it out to you. I apologize. I am going to put that out on Saturday. We'll call it a bonus video, even though it's really just a few days late. Sorry about that. If you like this video, though, please hit like. If you have not subscribed, my logo is up here. Click on that to subscribe, watch some of these videos, and you have a great weekend. I look forward to talking to you on Monday.